lot of people loved and a lot of people hated this series, and that makes sense in a weird way. Well, let's get straight to the point. So guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon who talks the most about Avatar on YouTube, and you're on my channel. As you may know, the live action of The Last Airbender made by Netflix made many changes in relation to the original animation. In fact, this adaptation follows a logic very similar to the live action of One Piece, in which they try to achieve as much visual fidelity as possible, but characters and aspects of the story are considerably changed. But in this case specifically, it's strange, because some things that were changed worked very well, both in terms of adaptation, as well as in terms of complementing and even improving in relation to the original material. On the other hand, some things that they tried to make the animation the same don't work well, and this is very atypical in these adaptations, because generally in adaptations, the negative points are in the changes, assuming that the original material is very good. We can say that the live action does a good job in adapting the aspects that would be more difficult, and that we generally see other adaptations make mistakes, but it doesn't do so well in more basic aspects. But let's understand what happened with this series. If you've seen the trailers and images, you probably had the impression that the look of the series is very good, and that's true. Both the visual fidelity and the quality of the effects are fantastic. In terms of visuals, I think there's nothing to complain about. The costumes are extremely faithful. The fight choreography combined with the fire, water, or earth effects were good. Despite the series not having as many physical fight scenes, the scenes don't disappoint, and that was something that really surprised me. Still talking about the things I liked, I thought it was really cool that Aang now has the ability to incorporate previous avatars and physically transform into that avatar. This gives the possibility for other avatars that were little explored in the animation to have greater participation and relevance in the story, like Avatar Kyoshi, who has an excellent fight scene, demonstrating all her power. Obviously, the series itself needed to place a limitation on this new ability of Aang, as this would directly impact the story, because if Aang could use this power at any time, he would not need to train and learn how to bend other elements, since the avatar that is invoked by Aang already comes with all the elements mastered, and Aang would be able to beat the Fire Nation without any problems. But Aang himself explains that this can only be done in the temple of that respective avatar. Many things were changed in the live action in relation to the animation, and this is where things start to get strange, as some changes were actually very good, such as the fact that they related Jet's origin to the Earth Kingdom, or some additions that fill in some gaps in the animation, but without compromising the canon. For example, Avatar Kuruk was known as an avatar who wasn't very active in his time when people needed him, and in the live action we discover that he was fighting in the spirit world, which is why he was absent from the human world, and this connects with what we already knew about him, that he lost his loved one to the Spirit Ko, the Face Thief, who appears in another episode. Another freedom that the live action took was to place all the events in chronological order. I believe the intention was to facilitate the public's understanding, but in my opinion, this linear narrative, in general, makes the story worse in several aspects. For example, I believe that the massacre scene in the Air Temple would have been much more impactful if it had been shown after Aang had been deserted, as the audience would have had the same expectation as the character, of wanting to discover and understand what happened. But I think the worst thing about this series are the characters. But the Monio, what do you mean? You said that some characters that didn't have much space in the original animation were more developed in the live action. Yes, this actually happened, especially with the previous avatars, as I already mentioned, but some characters that had greater relevance in the story were very simplified due to little development, as is the case with Bumi, and many others. For example, General Iroh was one of those who disappointed me the most. He starts the series as a somewhat silly comic relief, which does not match his wise and serene personality, and this is a very curious case, as the series tries to develop taking advantage of the more serious tone of the live action to portray the character's grief much more and making reflective scenes about his role in the war. But still what we have is an empty shell, which is much inferior to the original. Inasmuch as it may be acceptable to have one or another character that disappoints you, the problem gets even worse when you realize that this extends to the trio of protagonists, as their friendship is not well developed, and this happens because the series sacrifices fun moments and interaction between them to give this more serious tone to the story, and this results in a friendship that is simply not believable. Understand that I'm not saying that having another approach is a problem, or that the problem is that the character is not necessarily the same as the animation, but some things simply created inconsistencies in the story. For example, Katara in the animation has a very stronger, with explosive moments and the determination of someone who imposes herself. The live-action Katara has none of that, so it is hardly believable that this Katara would have the courage to challenge a master from the Northern Water Tribe to a fight. Katara in the animation is an absolute prodigy. She becomes the most powerful waterbender that has ever existed. For me, it makes no sense to diminish the character in that way. There are some scenes in the animation that will still happen in the next seasons that I simply cannot imagine Katara from the live action doing it, because it just doesn't fit. Aang is another character that seems very inconsistent in relation to what Aang should be, and I'm not saying that the acting of these specific characters is bad, but it's the way the characters were written that in my opinion wasn't good. The series still has another additional problem, which is that it is too expository, trying to explain everything to you all the time, and not only that, even things that have already been verbalized, the characters repeat themselves too much. Aang, for example, repeats the exhaustion that he has to protect the world, and I understand that this is his character arc, but verbalizing this all the time is underestimating the audience's intelligence. Overall, the series is fun. I liked what I saw, but the lack of development of the protagonists is one of the points that makes it stop being excellent, as well as the animation, and fall considerably below. Even so, if you really like Avatar or if you haven't seen the animation, this live action is an excellent gateway for you to discover the original work. But what about you? Did you like the series? Leave it in the comments, and if you like the content, subscribe to follow the next videos. Until next time, my people, demonic hugs.